Hello and welcome back to Chiefsman's Corner, the recorded edition. I'll attempt to be available for comments when this goes live around 9 p.m. Eastern Monday night. I'm your host, Coach Winuvas, one of the leadership team here in WFL and the coach of the Arizona Cardinals. On this show, we're going to dive into some Week 6 action. We're going to talk about players of the podcast, and then we're going to have a special segment in lieu of the Ask the Chief segment. We're going to talk pretenders and contenders at this stage of the season. If anyone is tuned in for the premiere, welcome aboard and thank you for listening. You can comment in the chat and I will try to respond to any comments. Excuse me. If you are watching this at any time, though, thank you for watching. Any and all support is appreciated. Without you guys, the WFL doesn't exist. As usual, housekeeping notes during these shows. The first thing to talk about, as always, is the WFL's incentive plan. This plan allows you to get some perks that aren't available for every member simply by doing some extracurricular activities that involve WFL. Anything from Twitter to articles on the Neon Sports site to commenting or participating in this show, even chatting in Discord can earn you points. Anything that makes WFL a more immersive experience and increases its presence in the Madden community earns you some sort of credit. Link to the incentive plan is available using the command /incentive plan in Discord. That is all one word, /incentive plan in Discord. Next thing to talk about is our form, our form Ask the Chief. Use this form during the week between episodes to submit any questions you have for me, and I'll answer them during the show, giving you credit for the question. This week we don't have any questions, but it is an easy way to build up incentive points and provide extra content for these podcasts. Use the command /AskTheChief, that is all one word, /AskTheChief, to pull up the form in Discord. With housekeeping out of the way, let's recap the scores from Week 6 action. Alrighty, and as we jump into Week 6 action here, we start with the New England Patriots moving to 2-5 on the season with a 37-28 win over the Los Angeles Rams, who fall to 0-6 on the season. Poor Coach TST got saddled with a rough Rams roster and is making the best of a bad situation. Thank you for that, by the way, Coach TST. Again, the Patriots moved to 2-5 on the season. 2 straight wins after 5 straight losses to start the season. So the arrow is pointing up on the New England Patriots right now. In a close NFC North matchup, the Minnesota Vikings stay undefeated with a 31-28 win over the Chicago Bears. The Bears fall to 500 on the season at 3-3, while Minnesota does remain undefeated at 6-0, leading the NFC North. 31-25 is your final between the New York Jets and the Miami Dolphins, another AFC East, in this case, division matchup. The Jets move to 5-1 on the season, while the Miami Dolphins fall to 1-6. But be on the lookout. Coach Kobe will have that team cruising in no time. The Bengals beat up on the Raiders 28-10 is your final here. Coach Rusta finally finds his defense for at least a week and goes to 3-4 on the season. While the Raiders fall to 2-4 on the season. In a NFC South division matchup, the Falcons beat up and triple up on the New Orleans Saints. 45-15 is your final here. Falcons move to 5-1 on the season and are cruising along in the NFC South, while the Saints are struggling to find their footing and are down at 2-4. And another game, the Arizona Cardinals traveled to Detroit and beat up on the Lions. 38-16 is your final here. The surprising Cardinals are 5-1 and leading the NFC West. More on that later. While the Detroit Lions fall to 2-4 on the season. In our game of the week for Week 6, we have the Tennessee Titans hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars in an AFC South matchup, and the Titans come out on top 31-20 is your final here. Tennessee cruising along at 6-1 on the season, while Jacksonville falls to 4-2. The Giants travel to Pittsburgh and have a humdinger of a game. 34-31 is your final here. The Giants move to 5-1 on the season, while Pittsburgh, after a quick start, has fallen to 2-4 on the season. In a high-scoring affair that involves one of our players of the week, the San Francisco 49ers moved to 4-2 on the season with a 51-31 drubbing of the Green Bay Packers. The Packers fall to 500 at 3-3 on the season, while San Francisco again goes to 4-2. In NFC East action, the Dallas Cowboys travel to Philadelphia and lose in Philadelphia to the Eagles. 34-16 is your final here. The Dallas Cowboys fall to 1-5, while the Philadelphia Eagles raise to 4-2. In a tight game between two guys that know each other pretty well from other games, the Seahawks and Coach Polio beat Smash Mouth fullback 33 and the Chargers of Los Angeles. 24-20 is your final. The Chargers suffer their first loss of the season and fall to 5-1, while the Seahawks, after a slow start and a big trade, are now improving and sit at 3-4 in the NFC West. Baltimore Ravens and Browns in an AFC North matchup. The Ravens come out on top 33-20 is your final here. The Ravens move to 3-3 on the season, while the Cleveland Browns fall to 1-5. And this involves one of our players of the podcast as well. In Week 6 action between two really good teams and different trajectories, the Colts get a little bit of an upset and finally get in the win column this season. 38-35 is your final here. The Colts go to 1-5 on the season, while Buffalo falls to 4-2 with a date against the 5-1 Arizona Cardinals on the horizon. And in our last game, which was simulated, the Kansas City Chiefs fall to the Carolina Panthers 35-21. Carolina goes to 2-4 on that sim game, while the Chiefs fall to 1-5. And that is it for Week 6 action. And I do want to quickly go over our players of the podcast. On offense, even though it wasn't a loss, I wanted to target somebody who doesn't get a lot of love on the show, mainly because the stat lines are usually a little rougher on him. But Rams wide receiver Van Jefferson had a monster game. 6 catches, 185 yards, and a touchdown in a 37-28 loss to the Patriots. While our defensive player of the podcast, Ravens middle linebacker Roquan Smith, 11 tackles and 1 sack in a 33-20 win over the Browns. A couple of honorable mentions. Patriots wide receiver Gabe Davis on offense, obviously. Bears wide receiver Darnell Mooney. Jets halfback Dalvin Cook. Cardinals quarterback Kyler Murray and running back Rashad Penny. Giants wide receiver Jalen Hyatt. 49ers quarterback Brock Purdy. I thought he was the offensive player of the podcast, but unfortunately he didn't quite make it. I wanted to mention the Rams in it, but Brock Purdy is definitely an honorable mention. 15 of 18 for 365 and 6 touchdowns and no interceptions. That's pretty hard to keep off of the offensive player of the podcast, but he just gets eked out by the Rams wide receiver Van Jefferson. And then Bills wide receiver Khalil Shakir also had a great game in that loss to the Colts. For defensive honorable mentions, Rams defensive tackle Bobby Brown III, Falcons cornerback Quincy Clark, Falcons defensive end Arnold Ebiketie, Jaguars defensive tackle Folorunso Fatukasi. I picked the worst names to try and pronounce. Titans free safety Kevin Byard, Giants linebacker Bobby Okereke, Eagles cornerback Darius Slay, and Colts defensive lineman Dayo Odeingbo. All honorable mentions this week for player of the podcast. And with that, we're going to jump into, as I get back to home screen here on Neon Sports. Give me just a second here, bear with me. As I get back to home screen so we can scroll through. And we can take a look-see at our standings. We're going to start in the AFC North, as I find where it is centered on screen. There we go, on the left-hand side. Excuse me. You currently have kind of a pseudo tie here, as Baltimore and Cincinnati both sit with 3 wins apiece. Baltimore sits at 500. I've marked them as the division leader on this particular talk, but we can talk Cincinnati as well. And I would say that Baltimore, unfortunately, is going to be a pretender. Not because of anything they've done wrong, but I think in that division, it seems it's going to be a dogfight till the end. And I don't know if Baltimore has the horses to keep up with Cincinnati's high-flying offense. And Pittsburgh, who's going to be improving, I think both Cincinnati and Pittsburgh kind of jump Baltimore eventually. And Baltimore will fall to 3rd in the division. But I could be surprised. I could be swayed. I think Baltimore right now is a pretender. And I think also Cincinnati is a pretender as well. I'm going to put them in the same kind of tie area, and I say pretender only because I think if they do make the playoffs, I don't think anything's going to happen in there. I think they're going to be one and done in the playoffs. Unfortunately, that AFC North is struggling to maintain some relevancy. I know Cincinnati's having a tough time with offense, with defense right now. They're having no problems on offense. Pittsburgh has been kind of hit and miss, inconsistent, and so is Baltimore. If Cincinnati can put it together and get some kind of defensive stops on that side of the ball, I think they could become the powerhouse of the AFC North. In the AFC South, I'm going to talk about the Tennessee Titans, and that's pretty much going to be it because the Tennessee Titans are currently leading the division by 2 games, and I'm going to call them a contender. I think last year, um, Cooley and his boys had a monster passing game going. This year, that's a little bit more muted, but they've striven for balance with Derrick Henry and Will Levis and DeAndre Hopkins and Treylon Burks, and I think it's worked out better in the win column for them. I think less focus on the passing game and more focus on the balance has helped guide Tennessee to a 6-1 record. And I think in the playoffs, if he can air it out and run the ball, I think the Tennessee Titans are a dangerous group to come up against. In the AFC East, I'm taking on the Jets here because they are clear leaders in the AFC East at 5-1. They're a game ahead of Buffalo. I think the Jets are contenders. They were contenders last year. They made it to the AFC title game and fought a hard-fought game against the Colts, ultimately lost. So I think DePerot and the Jets are definitely dangerous individuals or dangerous team in that AFC East, and I think they're definitely contenders in the AFC as a whole. In the West, I've got Denver and the Chargers, both at 5-1. I'm going to say that both of those teams are contenders. I know that the Chargers made the playoffs last year and tried to make a little noise in the playoffs, and I think he won one game and ultimately lost out in the division matchup. Denver, I want to say made the playoffs as well. Maybe they won a game, maybe they lost in wild card weekend. I can't 100% remember. But both of those teams can make some noise potentially in the playoffs if they make it in. I think both of them will at 5-1. I see both of them kind of continuing their winning ways, and in this AFC, you're going to need to be winning to stay afloat because right now the Chargers have one of the wild card spots. Buffalo's right on their heels, and so are the Jacksonville Jaguars. And Cincinnati ain't far behind either. So there's a lot of dogfighting for those wild card spots, and even still some division shots up for grabs because we're still very early in the season. That kind of does it for the AFC side of things. Let's swing back to the NFC side. Let's look at the North first as I get it centered up. Minnesota's undefeated. They are contenders. Rim has always had a high-powered offense. He's been average on defense at best. If he stays average on defense and can maintain Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins' capabilities as far as skill set, I think the sky's the limit for Minnesota again this year. I predicted them to go to the WFL Bowl last year. They didn't quite make it, but I think that they have the tools to make it far in the playoffs. In the NFC South, it's a one-horse race, the Atlanta Falcons. And the Atlanta Falcons are a tough customer. I would definitely put them in the contenders category. I'm not sure if they'll make a ton of noise because they do have a heavy run attack. And in the playoffs, while that normally would be good in the real world, in the virtual world, you do have to be able to air it out a little bit. And I think that's where Studley struggles a little bit. But 5-1 is still 5-1, so definitely a contender in that NFC as far as playoff positioning is concerned. In the NFC East, oh boy, look at this. You got 5-1, you got 4-1, you got 4-2. That's a tough division. In any one of those three teams, I realize I've only been talking about the division leaders specifically, but any one of those three teams, in my book, are contenders. Clyde is always consistently a great player. Waffles made it to the bowl game last year as the NFC representative from out of nowhere, it felt like. And the Eagles, after finally getting their footing, T. Hoove has got his Philadelphia Eagles flying high like they're supposed to be. I think all three of those guys are contenders. And then we get down to the NFC West. The Cardinals are pretenders. 5-1, yeah, whatever. They're 5-1. They've had one loss to a sim team in Seattle. They've beaten up on a CPU team. They've gotten lucky as far as the scheduling goes. It's been a lighter schedule as far as playing teams are concerned. They now get into the meat of their schedule. They now play the Bills and they play the Vikings before they go back to playing the Rams and get to more division games. I will tell you for a fact the Cardinals are going to lose their next two games. They're just going to be out of it. And with the way the 49ers are playing right now, they're rocking and rolling. 49ers have a ton of talent. And then you got Seattle, who made a big trade. These guys, as good as Arizona has played, the 49ers are a game back and the Seahawks are 2 games back. There is no way the Cardinals maintain that pace to keep ahead in the NFC West. They will be in 3rd place by the end of the season, and they will be dragging probably similar pick to what they had last year. They'll probably sit around 9-8, maybe 10-7, but they won't be in the playoffs. They're pretenders. They always have been pretenders. They will always be pretenders. Now, as far as the 49ers are concerned, I would also honestly clarify them as a pretender. Even though they do have a good record and they have good talent, and that Brock Purdy had a great game last week, I do think that eventually when he gets into the money games, I think Too Cold will unfortunately buckle under the pressure. Polio, I would probably also put in that pretender category, just because I think also our division is basically the tryhards, and unfortunately tryhards don't do well against actual talented users, and unfortunately we're going to find that out whenever we play anybody. Whoever makes it out of the NFC West, and it will only be one team, I feel like, they will go and they will have a rough time in the wild card. No matter if it's Arizona, which it won't be, but if it's San Francisco or Seattle, I think that's a tough wild card matchup for them facing whoever they got to face. So basically anybody in the NFC West I consider a pretender, and come at me Too Cold, come at me Polio. Prove it in the playoffs whenever you guys jump me in the division rankings, because ultimately the Cardinals are going to falter and they're going to fade, and you guys are going to have to take on the mantle and go get beat on wild card weekend. With that, that does it for the Pretenders Contenders segment, and with that our show is going to come to a close. Thank you guys for tuning in, whether it's been live with the premiere or with the recording after the fact. I appreciate it. The WFL appreciates it. And we hope you're entertained by the show. Let us know by throwing us a like, subscribe, or leaving comments. Any feedback, good or bad, is always appreciated. Hopefully next Monday I'll get one more video up, but after that I may go on hiatus for the holidays, guys, just letting you know in advance. But at least next Monday we should have a show. So until next Monday, folks, the corner is closed.